So a few years ago, we had done a cruise down the east coast of Africa, and we enjoyed it so much that when this cruise came up, we decided we should take a look at it as well. And some of these countries we knew we didn't want to spend any length of time in them, so a cruise is a good way to get a touch. So you can see, as Gerry pointed out there, we started in Portugal, we ended in Cape Town, and then we went to Botswana for a couple of safari weeks. We started off very royally. We're not going to spend a lot of time in Portugal, but we were upgraded to this suite and decided we really felt like royalty. If you haven't been to Portugal, it is an absolutely amazing place to visit. And we toured the city by tuk-tuk, as you can see in the top there. And this is our favorite monument, and that's Henry the Navigator at the top. We had a couple of days in Portugal, and so we did some touring. This is the Mafra Castle, and it's got 1,000 hectares of land. So it was also known for its hunting, and one of the rooms, as you can see by the inset, was completely decorated with furniture made out of animal hides and antlers and heads on the walls, and you can see the chandelier was rather bizarre. This was my favorite room by far. The highlight was an amazing library that had 30,000 books that were from the 14th, 15th, and 16th century. The neat part was they were done covered in animal skin. And there's bats that fly around at night, and for some reason, their bacteria prevents any of the animal skin from decaying. Portugal's known for its wine, and we visited some very interesting and delicious wineries. It's also the world's largest producer of cork, but that's another story. A very unique stop is the Pena Palace in the Sintra Mountains, and it was on the grounds of a monastery, and then it became the Summer Palace. And it had very, very unique colors and unique artwork throughout it. So our cruise heads out, and our first call is in Portimao, and our tour heads for Silva, which was a very important trading center. From the brick castle that you can see on the inset, the Moors defended the entire region while their boats sailed up and down the Arade River to trade with North Africa. From the top, we had a beautiful view of the fortress walls, and you can see the old windmill in the inset there. It's the only one we saw working, and we saw storks nesting on every available tree branch. The salandra is a beautiful, huge yellow flower that we've now seen in a few places. And back to our cruise ship, which is the Regent, and there's 700 passengers on these cruise ships, so it's not one of the huge ones, it's just a really nice size. Next stop, Santa Cruz de la Palma, which is one of the Canary Islands, and it's owned by Spain. There's 7 major islands and a number of smaller ones. Now, you may have remembered in 2021, they had huge volcanic eruptions, and they had an area that was still completely closed off. Now, you can see here, it's obviously the whole island is volcanic. You can see the caldera there. Most of the inhabitants of La Palma live around the shoreline. The inside is very, very mountainous. The hillsides were covered with banana plantations, as well as greenhouses which grow flowers and vegetables, which they export. The beaches were amazing, absolutely black sand. And Gerry, if you'll just stay there for a minute, the volcanic eruptions, if you do remember, they went on for 856 straight days. Over 7,000 homes were affected, and over 2,000 people were still out of their homes when we did this trip. And there were areas where they've built a road on top of the lava, but they tell you don't stop, because if you stay too long in one place, your tires might melt. So there's still heat underneath the ground. So we headed out on a tour, and our first stop was Le Mirador de la Concepcion, and that's on top of the caldera that we looked up at before. And I had to put this little church in. When the volcano, not this particular volcano eruption, it caused a brief snowstorm, and that's how it got the name Our Lady of the Snows. And the mosaic, as you can see, in the stones are beautiful. Inside, the statue of the lady is not very big. It was only about this tall. So when there were disasters, the people asked to bring the lady out. And if there was drought or flooding or anything like that, so they appealed to the Pope, and they say it worked in 2 major incidences that they're very aware of. Our tour was to see the caldera, but we were very disappointed. It rises 8,000 feet from the sea. And unfortunately, we did not get a good view. And when you're in a bus, usually if you have a boat, they win. And people wanted to go back to the ship. At that point, they didn't want to walk to the viewpoint. Our next stop looks almost the same. Santa Cruz de Tenerife. Thank you. This is the largest of the Canary Islands with a population of about 900,000. We'd been there before, so we were very excited that this time we were taking a tour up to Mount Tied, which is the world's 3rd largest volcano, and we had a perfect day for it. The largest eruption was in 1399. It's still active. Just a small eruption happened 2 years ago. So on the very top, there is a chairlift, and I sort of said to the guide, why aren't we doing this? He says, you have to book months and months in advance to get up there. And when you're up there, you can actually smell the sulfur, and you can see the lava stream coming down the side there. So it was very interesting. So we continued on to this very unique area of rocks called the Rocks of Garcia, named after a fellow who used to herd his goats here. It's now a national park. The single spire is the symbol of the park, and if you look at the people at the bottom of the spire, it gives you a really good perspective of size, and you can see it's on their money. And then we head down the mountain and enjoy the greenery of the farming valley that is down around the ocean. And the town of Puerto de la Cruz was a really fun place to stretch our legs, and we walked all along the coastline. But soon enough, it's time to head to the other side of the island and head back to our ship. The archipelago of Cape Verde is our next stop, and it has a Portuguese background. And the island of San Vicente is the one we're stopping, or Vicente, sorry. And it was a very important stop in war times for refueling and for communication. We hiked across a very dry valley that before the current drought was a thriving agricultural area. And if you look at the corn crop in the inset, it was really sad. But other parts of the island were spectacular for scenery. We took a very narrow winding road up 730 meters to the viewpoint on Mount Verde, which is seen in the picture here. The entire area used to be filmed with very small terraced farms. Our guide said that his country is extremely laid back. It's very calm. He says it's like we have 70 minutes in an hour. It was rather interesting to be in the front seat for this tour. Luckily, the buses only went up one way. So once they were all up there, then they would turn around and come down, because passing one little car was bad enough. The clouds and the fog had been blowing around all day, and so our view wasn't the very best, but you can make out the cruise ship if you get a good look there. This was our luncheon stop. It's popular for swimming, but we didn't have time to go in. But this is what we had for lunch. 2 kinds of fish, potatoes and yams, vegetables, rice, chicken, their local vegetable stew with corn called cachupa. We had beer, we had dessert, and then to make sure that we really enjoyed ourselves, we had ponche, which is really, really strong, and their national liquor. Great sand dune. This was a very different island to visit, very scenic to drive around. Now, I'm not going to read all of this, obviously, but you can see about 35 cruise ships a year will stop there. We were the first cruise ship after COVID to stop there, so they were still getting reorganized. There's no wildlife. There's just birds. And I like this one. You borrow money to pay to build the first floor of your house. And then when you've paid that off, you borrow more money to build the second floor and you rent out the first floor. So it could take you a long time to get your house done. Our second stop on this same archipelago of Cape Verde is Praia on the island of Santiago. And this city is the capital and the largest as well. We did a short walking tour around the central part of the city, seeing the different government houses and it's the governor's home on the inset. In one of the city parks, we haven't seen any wildlife yet, so we had to take a spider picture just in case we didn't see any more. Out of the city, we enjoyed the view of all the little terrace farms on the hills of this beautiful valley. Not many of us could picture farming like this with our livestock confined to small pens on the hills. The goats were just in that little tiny fenced area. In another direction, we looked down into Old Town. We visited the fort and were very impressed by the rockwork, especially the domed cistern in the middle. In Old Town, all the houses are called colonial because of their design, your central door and the two windows. This one was beautifully kept. This is on Banana Street, which was the first street built by the Portuguese in this town. We were lucky enough to attend a local market and observe the people. It was a Sunday and many of them were dressed up for church. Absolutely beautiful. However, this lady waving to us was very hard at work over her cauldron, and I have no idea if she was stirring laundry or if she was making stew. Colorful boats and equally colorful basket work made the photography fun, and I've got a couple of baskets up at the front for you to look at later. And soon the day's over, and we're back on board for our sail away, and this little island was used to isolate ill people. So welcome to the Gambia. This is a country that's only 50 kilometers wide at its widest point, the smallest country within mainland Africa. These lady drummers were amazing. They're wearing gloves that have metal tips on each finger. So as they're beating these big calabashes, the sound was absolutely amazing. So we arrive in Banjul, the capital city of 400,000. And the population of La Gambia is about 2.5 million. This is the home of Kunta Kinte from the book Roots. And one of the tours went up the river to what they considered was his hometown. On April 1816, the island went to Britain, and then Britain Britain gave it back to La Gambia in 1994, and this arch commemorates their independence. Driving along the roads, as usual, is incredibly entertaining, unbelievable traffic, donkeys, carts, and we enjoyed the colorful school uniforms, and there were many Muslim people in La Gambia. You can maybe not in this picture, some of the girls had up at the top right there, you can see there were quite a number of girls that had their heads covered. We saw quite a number of very poor tent cities, but most of them were behind the trees and we couldn't get a picture. And I said, what are these? The ladies sit and shell oysters for hours. And then these oysters are they're piled on the roadside and collected, and they'll be used for they're crushed for flooring or for making paint or fertilizer. And that's the way they make their lives. Peanuts are also a huge part of the agriculture economy. Once the peanuts have been harvested, the rest of the plant doesn't go to waste. This is all peanut grass, and it's used for animal feed. So our tour, we drove into a forest reserve area, a national park, and we really enjoyed talking to the people. As many as 3 million people had been taken as slaves from this general area. These women were hard at work cooking up chicken and fish for our luncheon, and they loved having their pictures taken and talking about where we were from. But we were going for a hike into the forest and hoping to see some of the birds and wildlife, But these vultures were actually sitting kind of right beside the chicken and fish. So it was pretty easy to get a picture of them. And this is quite an army of soldier ants that we very carefully stepped over. And you can see the termite nest was quite a castle. Now, there's lots and lots of different kinds of trees, and I've got a whole list that you can see, but some of these were the more interesting ones. And every tree had a different purpose of some sort, be it medicinal or for construction. Very, very interesting. And look at the seed pods that are hanging beside me in the top right-hand side there. So in the middle of the forest is this little palm leaf shed. And for a mere $1, I could have my palm read. So I decided, well, what the heck, I'll go in and have my palm read. And it was all pretty general, but there were a couple of things that I thought, how did he know that? So maybe there's something to it. I don't really know. And then we tried some fresh palm wine. So they tap the palms, and then if you have it fresh, it's really good. If you leave it for any length of time, it gets really strong, and we have had it when it's been really strong. But after we did that, they said, well, come on and try climbing a tree. So I said, oh, Gerry will do that. So, but they didn't let you go up very high at all, but that was kind of fun to try it. And then they did dancing for us, so you can see that some of them have sticks. The drums and the sticks kept incredible rhythm. There was lots of really high knees. And then in the inset, the forest monster appears, and they have lots and lots of fun. It was very colorful and excellent. And then the baboons showed up. They weren't in the forest where we were hiking, but they knew what time lunch was, and they came in, and there was a lot of squabbling amongst the teenagers of this troop. There's just one of the little babies. A small market was beside the meeting area, and of course, these guys work hard to make their souvenirs, so sometimes you just have to buy one. Look at the loom on the inset. Isn't that fascinating weaving? So at this point, we're running late. So the driver just steps on the gas and we gun it all the way home. And it is difficult to photograph out of dirty windows and of fast vehicles. But it was fascinating. It was absolutely terrific. We passed an abattoir. In the morning, we saw all these animals walking along the road. In the afternoon, we saw all the carcasses hanging by the road. And the vendors are awaiting our return. We're on our cruise ship looking down now. I wanted that big basket and figured there's no way in the world I'd ever get it home. So I just took a picture. The ocean was a very busy place and kept us amused as we headed south. We had never seen ships that supplied power to countries before. I don't know a lot about it. We're fairly sure they run on diesel, but the inset is the one that was at Gambia, and the one on the top is the one at Ghana. So they are actually selling power to the country. Now, Ghana, because of their location, considers themselves the center of the world. So you can see they're almost on zero, and they're on the 0 degrees longitude as well. So over 31 million people. Here, bauxite is being brought in by rail from the interior, and it is exported all over the world. Our tour is again mostly by bus. I'm going to repeat that because we were the first ship there after COVID, that some of them were just getting their tourist program set back up. So we're inside a bus that has, some of you have been in where they have the little fringes around the windows. So the little baubles down, and there's velvet here and velvet there, and the windows are incredibly dirty. And we have to look out of those windows. But something Gerry and I have learned in our travels is secondhand clothing is a major, major industry in other countries. It's fascinating. Our next stop was at this museum, and the statues in the grounds were absolutely outstanding. We were not allowed to take any pictures inside where all the wonderful models of villages and weapons and tools and artwork were. But the display, and that's a traditional dress that she's wearing. The displays of slavery were really, really well done, and it was a very somber moment to realize that we're standing where thousands and thousands were captured. and sold into a life of unimaginable horror. The doors themselves were a work of art. Ghana has a very, very tropical climate. It has sandy beaches, and there's castles, and it's those castles that actually have now been UNESCO World Heritage Site, and they have more of the history of slavery, and unfortunately, that wasn't the tour that we did. During World War II, timber, cocoa processing, but during World War II, they also built British aircraft destined for Egypt. We drove through many parts of the city. This is where all the fishermen lived. And our impression, again, was extreme poverty. The men fish, the women sell the fish. So here they're drying. Now, Saturday is a day for huge funerals. And we saw so many of these that we had to ask questions. Everyone wears red or black unless you're very old. And if you're very old, you wear white. The body lies in the morgue for up to 3 months. Friday is the day for just immediate family. Saturday, everybody attends. There were huge crowds at every one we passed. Sunday is a celebration with food and beverage. Weddings were also discussed. They're arranged, and Gerry, I'm sorry, I have to keep talking here because it's so funny. There's a bride price. So you have to pay something to the mother. You have to pay something to the father. You have to pay something to the brother for taking care of the sister. And when you marry the entire family. And they are all welcome in your home whenever they want to come. There is no need to call ahead. You always make more food than you need because someone's always arriving. They come expecting food, drink, clothing, and a bed to sleep in. That's their open door policy. So any of you that have problems with in-laws or things, we were treated to a wonderful display of music and dancing, although it was incredibly hot as we were sitting there. How these young boys managed to keep dancing for almost an hour, I don't know. And this fella was very agile, and they're so, so colorful. But we didn't see a lot of the country. We got back to the ship in time to see this is what we were going to have for supper. Now, the next stop is Togo. And my goodness, what a welcome. So this is from our cruise ship looking down, and what a welcome we got here. So, Gerry, I'll let you start that. Have you got the mouse there? Now, unfortunately, in our videos, I'm sorry, but I'm showing you a video, but these guys still walking down Canyon backward. They sparred with each other. They were free. I can guess how many. That is other fleet. We're in the very chief port of the country. Okay, sorry, just have to. It's a major, major trading center for the Europeans to purchase slaves as well, earning Togo the nickname the Slave Coast. We walked here in the morning on a Sunday, and it was absolutely beautiful, but you can't see the garbage, even though it's there. I don't know how we found a piece of sand that it wasn't. It was very hot. By afternoon, though, there were all sorts of families out there. Here you can see the garbage that is present in a great fishing boat. It was amazing to watch the streets for the various vehicles and the people out and about. And I think our Canadian men should wear more colorful suits like this guy had on. We stopped at this beautiful church, but there was a service going on, so we did not interrupt. Wandering through the markets is always fun. Once again, a lot of clothing, and I love the colorful fabric. If any of you happen to be quilters, oh my goodness. And Sunday morning, obviously, wash day for many. Now, from a church to a very different religion market. This is called a fetish market, and it is the world's largest fetish market. So the voodoo leaders send people there, send clients there to get a fetish of some sort to increase their powers. Now, we identified baboons, monkeys, snakes, geckos, crows, feathers and all, a peacock, different animal hides, bats, vultures, ducks, boars, necklaces of vertebrae, carvings, crocodiles, monkeys, snake skins in coils, cats, starfish, porcupine quills, crocodiles, lizards, vultures, hedgehogs, and more. Chameleons. The carcasses at the market are ground into powder. Then you add a few herbs to it, I'm assuming, to enhance the flavor. And there are charms for everything. So you can get a charm for safe travel. You can get a charm for a sore throat. Now, there are ducks and bats and vultures and all sorts of things. Now, just hang on a second here, Gerry. In the back corner, which we didn't know about at the time, there's a little doctor's office. So you could go in and see the voodoo priest and you could get your prescription for what ails you and then take your carcass home and cook it up into some sort of soup or tea, whatever you wanted. This is hard to look at, I know, but did you know that a cat skull is used to treat memory loss? Voodoo is considered a religion, and our next stop is to see what a ceremony actually looks like, and we're sort of hoping to understand it more. So we get to the site, and first of all, we have to be officially welcomed, and they had to sanctify the ground before we could step on it. Now, a ceremony only occurs when there's a reason for it. So if there was war coming, or if there was sickness, or if they felt there was evil in the wind, and it says voodoo is not practiced to harm people, but only to heal and to do good. The drummers were amazing. They went on, they'd already been drumming for over an hour before we got there, and they never stopped. Now, people in trances, and again, we were late getting there, we didn't see them put into the trance. This man spun in circles and danced the entire time we were there, and he had been dancing for a good half an hour before we got there. So what they say is when you're in a trance, you don't possess your body. You can see and your brain still works, but you don't remember what you did because it would be dangerous to try it when you're not in the trance. Very, very difficult to understand. At times they put ashes on themselves or paint on themselves, but we didn't really have a guide explaining each thing. So it was very difficult to understand. Now, this performance is for, today it was about demonstrating the power to transform objects. So today they were transforming mud into candy. So they would bury the mud and then they would dig up a bag of candy, which, okay. It is really hard. There were men tied up that released their own bonds to show that they were powerful. This man is going to boil water that's balanced on a single stick. They believe when they're in their trance, they are completely bulletproof. And they do use voodoo dolls at times, and you'll have to see my voodoo doll that I got at the market. Other dancers were very active the entire time. This little baby was bounced around for an hour. There was a large audience watching us and watching the ceremony. We seemed rather dull and underdressed, and I asked Gerry if he'd like to go shopping. Okay, and then back to the ship, and I just love this picture of the guys taking a rest on the top of the sea can there. Our next, of interest, okay, all the fresh water on the ship, everything, it's completely self-contained. The ship can do everything that, Gerry went to the engineering section and learned all about this on our day at sea. The next stop is the country of Sao Tome, and these islands were completely uninhabited until their discovery by the Portuguese in the 15th century. Lots of homes right beside the road. They're mostly the same design, built on the stilts for 3 reasons: for flooding, for rats, and for air circulation. And they do have beautiful designs on them. This is a local clothing store, big families. The average age of the country is 19, which is a very, very young country. Cycles of unrest and economic stability throughout the 19th and 20th centuries culminated in peaceful independence in 1975, so it's now one of the most stable and democratic countries. Roca Aqua Izay is an old plantation. They used to process coffee and then cacao and then palm oil, and now it's a factory for recycling plastic. And please take a look at the placemats I have at the front that are all done from plastic saved from the ocean. Short way up the hill to this old hospital building, and what a building it was. But it's been completely left, and so now people are living in there. And you can see the lace curtains on the window on the left there. And the children were very, very interested in us. They wanted to see if we had candies. The reason we're up there was for the view. Absolutely beautiful. The Boca do Inferno, the blowhole, was the next stop. And the power of the ocean just reinforced. And then it was a nice time for coconut water. Very refreshing. Lots of children around. And I just love this lady's hair. Whoa, amazing. Seven Waves Beach is a magic beach. People leave things here for the gods to take. And Kathleen, our guide, says she can't explain it. It's home to the shy rainbow crab in the corner, and I loved that sand dollar. Next on the agenda, we went to an active cacao plant. The fruit's picked right off the tree, and we ate the white jelly on the inside. And then, of course, we went through the whole entire process where it's separated, it's fermented, and then it's dried, and then it's sorted, and it's the country's most important crop. Coffee is also growing here, too. The scenery was very, very interesting. The road's narrow and winding, and the trees and grasses hid everything alongside. Colorful flowers common. When we stopped for lunch, the gardens were very special, and we had beautiful gourmet food at this restaurant. And then we were entertained with music and dance again. And I think you can just go past that, Gerry. Can you imagine trying to take this hairdo out? I think you would actually have to just cut it off, don't you? And then after lunch, we drove back along the coast and to see another dance production. And there was a huge group watching this production, and we loved seeing the children. They were all waiting for handouts, and I quietly took a candy out of one pocket and handed it to one little girl, and she waved, and they all came over. And our home away from home awaits us. Now it's time to cross the equator. If you've never crossed the equator by sea, you are called a pollywog, and you must be initiated. So first you have to be cleansed, as you can see here, and in the next picture, you can see our friends at the top are all getting cleansed. And after you have kissed the fish, you now become a shellback. Now there's all sorts of pomp and ceremony included, and the men like the mermaids. The ladies like the pirates. And then there's ice carving, so a pretty usual sea day. We're now well below the equator and in Namibia. Gerry and I have been there before and did a really, really intensive tour. It's an extremely unusual country. From the ship, we followed the road for quite a ways. It's a lot of sand. And it doesn't take long for us after this. You can see the homes of the rich here. The palms were donated. And then Gerry headed into the desert and did some dune climbing. And they had a lot of fun. They had a good time. They visited the welwitschia plants. They only have 2 big leaves, and they live for many, many years, and they never look any better than that. So don't wait around and try and get a better picture. This was a barren place called the Moonscape. Now, meanwhile, I went into the townships and saw how the real people lived. And I could not believe how crowded it was. These places were built by the government for them to live in. And as you can see, it's a resettlement community. It was quite amazing. This is a relatively typical yard. You can see the toilet is out of doors. Many had a shed in the backyard, and they rented those out to people who were awaiting a house of their own. Not everybody had electricity. Most did not have water. You had to go to a main water pump and pay for your water. On one side of the road is the Damara tribe. On the other side of the road is the Herero tribe. And what the government did is kept them separated and different to make sure that they didn't uprise, to keep the tribes weak, to keep them divided. And you wouldn't believe on the left side there, like 4 men would sleep in one of those little teeny tiny where one window is, 2 bunk beds on each side, and that was it. The people living here work in the cities, but they have pretty well everything they need here, including this hardware shop. So barbers, hairdressers, lawyers, elementary schools. I couldn't believe this. I thought, what are they doing with this stuff here? And then I found out it was all full of seal oil. And they just used the bottles and didn't take the labels off. So I thought that was, and then that's seal jerky in the corner there. First of the 3 homes we visited was to a Herero woman. She's 71, great-grandmother, and she's wearing her traditional dress and hat. The hat represents the horns of the cow, and I have a doll up at the front that you can see. And she sat and talked about her life. To get married, you have to pay 2 cows. To get divorced, you have to pay 6 cows. Sure, her granddaughter was there as well. Now, we saw the calabash, as you can see in the inset there. If a woman can milk a cow directly into the calabash, she's a good catch. This Damara woman, I'm sorry, it's not a great picture, but she liked to cook. So she was a teacher, but she loved to cook, and so people asked her to cook for them. Then they asked her about traditional cooking, and pretty soon she ended up with a restaurant, and she's done extremely well. We had quite a tasting of Namibian food. There's 4 things. There's the mahango grain on the very top, and it's and you break off a little piece, put it into a ball, and you put it into the spinach dip. But of course, the big thing were the mopani worms. Crunchy and spicy. I was very proud of myself. I had to eat 2 because we missed the picture on the first one. And then I bought a beer to wash it down. The next stop was at a Nama house, so another tribe. And this lady presented us with all her cures from the plants of Namibia. And they speak with the click language, so it's just fabulous to listen to them. And then we had a visit to the sand dunes, and then it was time for our day to be over. Now we're getting very close to Christmas, and the ship's been decorated, so we dressed up and posed with our little group as our last supper together on the ship. The next day is Cape Town, South Africa, and what a great way to approach the city. Oh, we love it. We went up to Table Mountain by cable car. We had a fabulous day. A great, great view of the city below us, and over Gerry's head is Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned. And it was a great day for visiting. Sometimes it's too windy, they can't even operate the gondola. And other times it's completely clouded over. The coastline in the opposite direction, Gerry and I have been driven down that road as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful city, but we were only there for a few hours because we have been there before. So it's time to head to Botswana. So here's just a recap of where we've been so far. All the way down the coast. And there's a few stops we were supposed to make and couldn't make because of various political problems. And Senegal was one, yes. Yeah, we were supposed to stop in Dakar. And Senegal didn't let us come in. And I love airports. And Gerry's couldn't understand why we couldn't buy a giraffe. Like, come on. I just love these things. They are so beautifully done. They really, really are. So we fly out of the city and get one last look at Table Mountain and Lion's Head. And a look at Robben Island, where Mandela was imprisoned for 18 of the 27 years. It's and you can tour that. Our friends actually went out and toured that the next day. But we're heading for Mon. You can see the red star at the top. And we have to go on a decent-sized plane to go to Mon, and we're going to transfer to a small plane. And we have an incredibly exciting agenda. From Mon, we're going to Jack's Camp, which is here. So we went from Mon to Jack's Camp, Kubu Island, and then back up to Chobe. Absolutely fascinating. It's just the two of us in a small Cessna. That's Mon below and the central hub of the Okabongo Delta. And a very nice welcome tent. They had fresh fruit for us, they had snacks, and our safari jeep and our guide was waiting for us. It doesn't take long before Gerry and I's cameras start clicking. And this is our destination. It's kind of a little oasis that sits in the middle of the salt plain. The large tent you see there is the reception, dining room, and high tea room and the bar. We have our own quarters. This is our entire home for 3 nights. Absolutely amazing. 3 rooms full of antique furnishings. We had a bedroom, a living room, a shower, a toilet, and a huge patio, and and then so when we go on that's our place right there. So we were right beside the watering hole. Beautiful. I don't often take pictures of squirrels when we're gone, but this little guy takes his tail, he puts it right over his head to provide shade in the heat. And there's zebras everywhere. And the very delicate springbok, and I don't know if you've heard of pronking. That's what pronking is in the inset, and they do that to try to scare away predators. Wildebeest are very common at Jack's Camp, also known as gnu. And this little guy was the bat-eared fox, and they had 4 pups, but they were very well disguised in the grass. And their big ears, they can actually hear insects underground. We had a wonderful walk with the Bushmen. They taught us all about plants that are eaten and used for medicinal purposes. I don't know if this is going to work or not. We'll see if we can... No, we don't have the sound on, Gerry. That's okay. That's okay. It was just interesting to hear their voices, but just, okay, they dug up a scorpion for us, and they used to use them to play with. That was their thing. It was kind of neat. Women aren't allowed to dig them out, though, just the men. And then they played incredible clapping games. They're just sort of trying to show us. We'd visited Bushmen in Namibia, and the games they play are so much fun. It's amazing. The next one, which is clapping, and Gerry, I think, put it on anyway, honey. But I still never figured out how you won the game. It has something to do with being the last hand or the first hand out. But they were laughing and having an absolute fabulous time. And it was fun to see. I skipped with them. We played a game of tag with them. They're a heck of a lot. They come from the border of Namibia and they stay here for 3 months. And then this family group will go back and they'll send out another family. So these are they're actually from Namibia rather than the Kalahari Bushmen. But notice they are wearing skins. They're wearing cocoons around their waist, which rattle. And everything she's wearing around her neck was for sale, which was kind of neat. So we had to shop from her neck. And here they're teaching us how to make a fire. What are your shoes made out of exactly? Oh, yeah, this probably isn't the best of all of them, though. So. But it was fun. And of course, they used a stick and they made the fire with rubbing the stick.
Animal skins. Neck skins. Neck skins because they are thick.
Their shoes are just a piece of skin. I'm worried about shoes to do this.
Like, oh
yeah, that's a shoe on the bottom. That's right too. That's a piece of shoe on the bottom. Yeah. Okay, that's okay on this one. Okay, we were able to give them some caps and bracelets and candies, and they were absolutely thrilled. And then after an afternoon shower, we headed out on another game drive. And this time, this is the reason we're here. I was bound and determined. This is our 5th trip to the continent of Africa. I wanted to see meerkats. And they're teeny tiny, of course, and they're not easy to see. But finally, I got to see meerkats. Now, just a minute here. The only time they stop moving is when they stand up and they check their surroundings. So when they become they're looking for danger and they emit a high squeal and then they run for their holes. When they've discovered something good to eat, they dig furiously. And here, Gerry is Their burrows are all over the place, but maybe we didn't get it turned, eh? Did we? Okay, so this one hopefully will show you. And it's a little bit long, but you guys, this little fellow was amazing. Now they have all sorts of burrows that they can run to, but he smelt a grub of some sort. And he just kept digging and digging and digging. And it's just, I kept thinking like, now watch as his head comes out, but just a minute here, Hill. Look at his head. Look at his head. I just couldn't believe it. He just, yeah, there's lots of ants and termites around, yeah. And then look it, he got it. It was a little grub inside a nut. That was it. And now he's shaking off the ants and so on. But it was fascinating to see what they'll go through for just a bite. So thanks for persevering with us on that. That was a lot of fun. They were super. So everybody in the group has some sort of job, gathering food, keeping a lookout. Some are actual babysitters in the dens. And that was a lot of fun. So at around 6 o'clock, it was just starting to get dusk. So they're heading for their bolt holes. And you can see they've got their guard there. And so the guide said to me, he said, come and sit down here. And so I sat down very quietly, and it only took a few seconds, and that meerkat crawled up me with no effort. They're very, very light because I'm the highest point of ground. So he gets to look around and see if there's anything at all. And so that was the highlight of my trip. And then it was the end. It was definitely a day to remember. The next morning, the fun never stops. So we arrange a helicopter ride, and what's really neat is they just take the doors off so it's easier for photography. And they'll come back and pick the doors up later. We were going to see the flamingos. Unfortunately, it's pouring rain, but we were still able to get a couple of shots of them. And it was fascinating, but the weather was lousy. Out over the salt pan, absolutely beautiful. These are very famous salt pans. Now I've just okay. We flew over a mining operation. They trucked the salt out. There's still miles and miles and miles of dry sand, and the water's only just starting to come. And we're heading for where the arrow is there. We're heading for Kubu Island. Our pilot, Nico, was thrilled to hike around the island with us. And we loved the baobab trees. There's 2 species of baobab trees that are endemic to Africa. 6 to Madagascar, but wow, that's another story. And it's believed they can live up to 3,000 years, but they don't have tree rings, so you have to do carbon dating. The flower is pollinated by bats and blooms only at night, and the fruit has great vitamin C. And the tree can be used by the local people. The bark and the flesh for weaving, and some things are ground into powder for medicinal purposes. We love the shapes and the uniqueness. There are about 100 trees on this little island. And then I love the violet color on the waxwing in the bottom corner there. And the ancient rocks were pretty impressive too. And this tree has become a symbol of the island. Mirages are all part of the desert experience. And in the inset there, Nico's bringing the doors back to the helicopter. And then sometimes we flew over animals. You can see the 3 ostriches there running. And that was really neat to see those below us. The herds of wildebeest. And in the distance, our little island of Jack's Camp. And in the trees, a white-backed vulture in its nest, and those are flying below us. And common around the camp are the pied crows. And the red-billed spurfowl are noisier than any bird we have here. They're just incredible. So time to relax a little bit and enjoy the scenery of the watering hole. This is our own little private swimming pool. And then we headed to the main tent for high tea. And there's so many artifacts and photos. It's an absolute museum in there. And then a night drive. We headed out to try and find aardvarks, but we never found them. But we found lots of spring hares. And you can see the picture in there. So they're like a rabbit, but they hop like a kangaroo. And in the morning, well, what the heck? We better do one more helicopter ride. And so our guide in the back there, KG, he joined us, and we're heading for Lost Island. And the tracks across the pan are amazing. And we followed an ostrich again. And here's some of the trees on Lost Island. They reach up to 82 feet high. They can be 46 feet in diameter. They're just absolutely beautiful. And every tree's different. We flew at elevations of 20 feet, feeling like we were in Star Trek, zooming over there, up to 800 feet. And it was already hot. It's 30 degrees outside. And then there's our watering hole, and you can see a farm or the cattle. The cattle are let out at night, and then they're put back inside the corral in the nighttime. Sorry, let out in the day. So lions had been spotted, so off we went. Dr. Livingston traveled right where we were standing in 1849. This youngster posed nicely. It was a female and her 2 cubs. Then it's time to say goodbye to our new friends, and the staff was simply amazing. At the airport, we had an elephant visit us. The elephants come here in a different season, so there weren't many here. So we're back in the air again, and we're flying for greener land. And here's the next runway that we're going to land on right here. And the fun continues. The lilac-breasted roller is a favorite bird of ours due to its beautiful colors. But the tall stork is pretty impressive too. And I don't think this bridge would pass inspection in many countries. A few Cape buffalo wandering around, and you can see the little oxpecker birds on them. They take care of any of the ticks. And the elusive leopard, our guide was determined to find him because he'd been spotted in the area. But even when the guide found him, it took us a minute for us to see him. They're so well camouflaged. But a beautiful and elegant animal. Compared to this big guy, we'd never call him elegant. And we turned a corner, and here's these 2 beauties just sitting, waiting for us. They're only about 10 months old, and I don't know if there's many people. Certainly, this was our first time that we actually saw 3 leopards in one day. Absolutely amazing. And then they just quietly wander away. The trees are badly damaged by the elephants. They'll knock them over, strip their bark, and eat the leaves. Female kudu. And we get to our next camp to check in. Every camp has its own personality, not as elegant as Jack's camp, but wow, did we love it. So we're in the dining room looking towards our cabin. Absolutely no complaints here. And the view, we are sitting here looking at a watering hole, but it's covered in green plants, so it's hard to see. But what we're watching, we're watching with its pod of hippos. Yes, there we go. Now, we'll see some more of those in a minute. Now, the next morning, the first thing we heard were the owls. These are the only owls that have pink eyelids in the world. Not a perfect picture by any means, but wow, they were beautiful. Impalas everywhere. The males with their incredible horns. The tsessebe is a weird kind of looking animal, but it's known for its speed. It's the fastest. And in the middle of our drive, we always stop for morning coffee break, and they now have portable tables that they just pull out from the grill there. The water buck are known as toilet seat antelope because of their circle on their butts. And this was a pair of ostrich who had a family. They're so well camouflaged, we almost didn't see them. But in this picture, there are actually 5 baby ostrich. They can lay up to 15 to 20 eggs because sometimes they have to kick an egg out to stop a predator from ruining the rest. A bathroom with a view. So this little room with the open doors, you can go in and use the facilities, and then you just look out at the hippopotamuses. And beside the bathroom was a hippo wandering around. Now, we do have to be very careful here. Most of the walkways are raised so the hippos can't get us, but the guides were always on the lookout, and especially at night. Sometimes we had to have a guide with us. But mid-afternoon, they're all in the pool relaxing. So it was absolutely fun. Is this a video here, Gerry? This is a video here, and we will play this one if we can get the sound as fun. Yeah, it needs a moment here. Should start. Okay, we'll leave it at that, Gerry. And the swimming pool provides a great view. And again, it's still very hot. So it was really, really fun to do that too. And that's close enough for us. These are big animals. And we have no idea how many were in the pool. 20 had been counted for sure at this watering hole. The fish eagle close by. And one of our favorite kingfishers is the woodland kingfisher. The southern giraffe was pretty elusive at first, but we eventually saw quite a number of them. That's okay, Gerry. I think we'll leave that one. Giraffes spend most of their days standing up, so they sleep standing up. They give birth standing up. They only need 5 to 30 minutes of sleep a day. So, and their colors vary dramatically from animal to animal. Their awkward tripod stance is necessary to reach ground level, of course. And these two juveniles, they're sparring, and it's called necking, where they thump each other and they use their horns on each other's thighs to weaken their stance. And we will show you this next video. Now, what they're trying to do is sort of show that I'm the strongest and push the other guy off balance. So they don't actually harm each other. They are just kind of showing who's the strongest. The daylilies were in bloom. We didn't see any of the night lilies that open at night. This tiny green frog just happened to land on Gerry's knee as we're driving down the road. So the whole delta area is full of channels of water and marshland. And the red lechwe had big, wide feet, so they're able to move around. The bridge is very primitive, and we did not relax going over them, I have to admit that. The majestic male kudu. And back to our friends in camp, there's one of his footprints. And they're just absolutely amazing, these guys. And it just pours. When it rains, it pours, and the hippos loved it. But the lightning hit not very far from camp, and boy, did it scare us. So the next morning, we better have another helicopter ride. This is Alex from South Africa, our enthusiastic pilot. Fantastic scenery, but it's still very difficult to photograph from a helicopter. This is very different from the Salt Pan and Jack's camp. The Okavango Delta gets all its water from the Angola highlands to the north. When the water gets too high, these wildebeest will not be here. They will find higher ground. And it's pretty easy to see the main channels. This entire area will be flooded. And the termite hills, where the elephants are standing, they will all become little islands. And in the next picture, you can see there's little termite hills everywhere. But the channels and waterways are kept open by the animals that just keep crisscrossing the entire place. And almost every water puddle had its pod of hippos. Some had more hippos than others. The satunga is an animal that's very, very rare to see because it spends its entire time in the water where boats and vehicles cannot get. And then we're back to the Mopani forests, home of the elephants and giraffes. And from the area, you can see this area that I've circled is all short trees. It's because the elephants have knocked over all the tall trees. We flew over some wattled cranes. And the resident spurfowl is waiting for us when we get back. When we flew out, we were the very first ones out of the new airport, and it had been pouring rain. And let me tell you, there was mud on those wheels, and there's muds flying up and hitting the wings. And we were very pleased to actually leave land. So we're heading for Kasani, and this is our new home here. So we're actually in a resort, but in the town of Kasani. So it's a little different than being out in the bush. But our accommodations are fine, and the swimming pool was great. The resort was quite busy. It was Christmas. Crocodile stir-fry was good, and the beer was good. So we headed out. Whoops, Jerry. We headed out on the river, but we did not go on this boat. As you can see, this boat is designed specifically for more serious photographers than us. And these chairs swiveled right around, and they had monopods underneath all their cameras. It was impressive. This is a picture we got. This is what they were focusing on. Elephants. There are 90,000 elephants in Chobe National Park, and we love watching every single one of them. We watch them interacting. They greet each other. They twine their trunks together. Their trunks hold up to 4 gallons of water. And elephants use their trunks as snorkels. You can see that in this very short video here. We've actually seen that the entire elephant is underwater, just the trunk is out. And it's quite amazing how they get across these areas. And we've seen a mother help a baby across when the baby wasn't going to make it herself. So that's kind of fun. Okay, and you can see this baby. They have gestation of 22 months, and they weigh between 200 and 300 pounds when they're born. And we saw all sizes. And oh, it's just amazing. This little fellow's nursing. They put their trunk right back, and they actually do use their lips for nursing. So their amazing proboscis, 40,000 muscles in the trunk. We have 650 in our whole body. It can pick up a piece of rice. Jerry, maybe show this one. I think. What they're doing here is picking up little grains of minerals. So they're going for the minerals in the dirt. There you can see they will use their foot to open up the ground, and then they will pick up a little piece of dirt. They're pretty impressive. There we go. The banded mongoose live in colonies of between 10 and 20, and they have a dominant male, and they like to live in old termite hills. This is a hammercock, very strange-looking bird, and they build huge nests, so big that a man can actually stand on them. White-backed vultures, quite common. We didn't see many warthogs this time, but this fellow was a pretty good one. The leopard tortoise, look at those legs of his. And quite often we would round a corner and see animals using the roadway that we're driving on. And where there's elephants, there's dung beetles. This is my favorite insect. They roll a ball, they just deposit the eggs in the ball, they bury the ball, and then await the hatching of the eggs. And we've seen a beetle roll a ball a long way to find the right burial spot. I have a bronze sculpture of a dung beetle. It's the only bronze I own. Lots of baboons, very, very common. This is plenty of giraffe on the delta as well. Giraffes are born with horns, which I didn't know, but they're soft. They're very, very soft cartilage, and then they ossify and harden as they grow older. Hippos, very active along the river. The wind and the rain fluffed up this guy's feathers. This elephant actually charged us. Jerry and I are sitting in the back of the Jeep. This elephant is coming after us full blast, and our driver slams on the brakes. And the elephant stops. And the guide said, I knew he was a chicken. Jerry and I didn't know he was a chicken. We were startled by this troop of baboons that crossed the road. There were so many, we never did count them. A troop can be up to 300 individuals. So it is fascinating to watch them. They're not a very pretty animal by any stretch of the imagination. Lots of, you can see the one closest to us here has a baby tucked underneath. When they get older, they sit on top. But we just sat on the road there and just watched them as they headed by. There's one that's older sitting on the top of its mom. They're actually kind of an ugly animal, but gosh, they're fascinating. They really are. And you add in quite a few impala as well, and it was a great scene. The Cape Buffalo word is active. Go ahead, Jerry. Yeah. The Cape Buffalo word is active, and there weren't very many of them. You'll get more of those in Tanzania and Kenya. You'll get a lot of those. The hippos are fascinating, and they can move. This guy charged the boat, but luckily the driver of the boat stepped on the gas instead, and we left him behind. But they kill more tourists than most of the other African animals. The open-bill stork dines on snails. The eagles soar overhead until they spot a fish, and then they dive. And this one, sorry, it's not a great picture, but he found a triggerfish you can see in his claws here, took it up to the tree and was just tearing the flesh apart. The prehistoric water monitor wandered by. And the world's largest heron is the Goliath heron, between a 6 and 7 foot wingspan. A trumpet hornbill and a group of vervet monkeys was in our resort when we returned. Their nickname, just in case you haven't noticed up here, is also known as the blue-balled monkey. Just want to point that out. A family of Egyptian geese and elephants playing in the mud were really fun to watch. And the baby actually got stuck, and the mom had to nudge it out or, wrap its trunk around her. They use them for the mud for sunscreen, for cooling off, and for insects. Although I can't imagine an insect actually biting through their skin. And on our last game drive, we saw a beautiful pride of lions, 15 of them. And they were very, very relaxed and kind of lazy. So we didn't see any roaring or anything like that. And and one more herd of impala. And look at how they're the same colors of dirt. So there's times that you drive by animals, you're not even aware of them. And one final thrill were the wild dogs. They're very rare, and they had not been seen here for over 5 months. So even our guides were as excited as we were. They're known as painted dogs, and they hunt really intelligently in packs. So they're very successful hunters. They were difficult to photograph, and I'm sorry, I know that's not 100% sharp. It was getting dark at that point, yes. And then it's time to head home, and you can see that we're between Botswana and Namibia. And the Kasane Airport is a big airport. But then we go back to the airport, and Jerry still says I can't buy anything. Now look at that giraffe on the left. You don't know where we live, but gosh, it would look good standing in our yard. Okay, or a zebra skin over the back of the couch. And then pula is cheers, and apparently it also means the same as money, but it also means let it rain, because rain is very important. So pula to all, and there's the end.